We are in Chapter 5 on page 53, heading, Man-Made Law Should Be Birthed from Natural Law. The limits placed on freedom can make us more free, and that is actually the role man-made law should play in the lives of people living in a free society. As government's role is to preserve order, but also to protect the rights and liberties from those who would seek to take them from its citizens, just laws are those that preserve freedom and protect individual rights. But that means our freedom ends when it takes away the freedom of someone else. When the inherent rights of one individual come into conflict with the inherent rights of another individual, that reveals the necessity for man-made as opposed to natural law. Man-made, written laws should only serve to adjudicate instances where the natural rights of one individual come into conflict with the natural rights of another. Something I don't really get into in this book, but could speak about at length and have everyone pretty much hate my perspective in the meantime, is that of abortion. Abortion is unique in that there are two human beings, both with innate natural rights, but who occupy the same space. Now, conjoined twins might argue the same could be said about them, but in the case of abortion, only one of the human beings sharing that space can advocate for their rights with the state. However, it is clear that the right to liberty or freedom and the right to pursue one's own happiness of the person, the human being with a voice, sometimes or often conflicts with the right to life of the human being without a voice and the right to pursue their own happiness. In this unique case, both sides of this debate have a very good argument for the state to intervene and create law in order to adjudicate this unique instance of natural rights. The natural rights of one individual coming into conflict with the natural rights of another individual. But also note that just laws are those that preserve freedom and protect individual rights. So kind of a side note, if a law does not do that, if it does not preserve freedom and does not protect individual rights, then it's probably not a just law. The Declaration of Independence explicitly recognizes life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as inherent and unalienable rights. And although Amendment 9 of the U.S. Constitution, part of the Bill of Rights, even though many Americans don't know about it, acknowledges, although Amendment 9 of the U.S. Constitution acknowledges other rights exist that are not explicitly delineated in the Bill of Rights, there is ample understanding that inherent and unalienable rights include, not exclusively, but they include freedom of speech and conscience, the right to peacefully assemble, the right to petition the government, and the right to be secure in one's person, papers, and effects. And James Madison made a really good point in his essay on property that freedom of thought, the right to hold an opinion contrary to the popular opinion, and the freedom to express that contrarian opinion is also a fundamental right. Freedom of thought and freedom of conscience are the backbone to not only freedom of expression or free speech or even freedom of religion, but the fundamental right to property. One's thoughts are one's own. And Amendments 4 through 7 also rely on the people's inherent right to own, use, and dispose of personal property as they see fit, as well as to protect their own person and their own freedoms. The government has no right to tell you what to do with your own property, whether it's real estate or your own family heirlooms or your expressed opinions or your personal talents and gifts and abilities. This actually gets convoluted with eminent domain, another topic I could go on at length about, which I will not. But we could also discuss licensing and taxing powers, but we'd get too far away from the point I'm trying to make here. Likewise, Amendment 2 seeks to protect the people's ability to protect their own rights and liberties, even against their own government. Amendment 2, please understand, is not about hunting or sportsmanship. It exists based on its own wording and the fact that it is in the U.S. Constitution, and the U.S. Constitution is supposed to protect citizens from government overreach. So Amendment 2 is about giving citizens the power to actually protect themselves, to actually protect their property, to actually protect their rights from government overreach. It should be very troubling when governments want to restrict law-abiding citizens' rights to defend themselves against the very same government who has shown a desire to take more and more rights away from its citizenry. I'm thinking maybe I should write another book just about these two hot button issues, or maybe the three now that I've mentioned, but abortion and the Second Amendment, and then we could talk about property, eminent domain and taxing and licensing and all that. But I really just feel myself getting sucked down a long distraction line at this point, so let's move on. Whereas an understanding of natural law, an understanding of natural rights, and an understanding that the connection man-made law has to the protection of rights through the preservation of order is necessary for the greatest expression of freedom for the greatest number of people, Rousseau's argument, which is also the argument for democracy, if you recall, Rousseau's argument is the exact opposite. The father of modern democracy argues that it is the natural boundaries that cause the evil and actually restrict freedom. Again, he argues there would be no trespassing and no stealing if no one owned property. Ownership caused the sins of trespassing and stealing. The trespassing and stealing in and of themselves are not wrong. They're only wrong because man made a law declaring them so. In this, Rousseau outrightly rejects the notion of natural law, and thus the notion of natural or inherent rights. And I think this is really important, and why I'm beating the drum about this democracy narrative. If you buy into democracy, you are rejecting the notion of natural law. And if you are rejecting the notion of natural law, you are rejecting the notion that everyone has liberties and freedoms and rights. This lines up very well with the position of those who do not see the greatest expression of freedom for all being found within the framework of natural law, but instead see pure freedom as doing whatever they want, whenever they want, wherever they want, to whomever they want. They, like Rousseau, see these natural boundaries as imposing on their freedom. However, government and laws written based upon the obvious, natural law and natural rights, is the happy medium between purge-like anarchy, which ultimately results in complete control of the weak by the strong, and that of Hobbesian authoritarianism to protect the lives of subjects. In fact, it is only within a society whose government and laws are written and executed upon natural law and natural rights that the liberty of all the people can be maximized, because it is obvious that order needs preserving and natural law provides the perfect balance between chaos and draconian controls. An actual microcosm of what happens when government cannot step in to preserve order is what happened in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina hit. With no government and no way for government to re-enter the area, people were left to their own devices. And there was violence and looting, which led to more threats of violence as people sought to protect their property against those who sought to steal and destroy it. Eventually, the government was able to come in, and they came in and they took all the guns, even from peaceful homeowners just trying to protect what was rightfully theirs, which meant the National Guard also had to take over the city under martial law, all to restore order. You may think the New Orleans example is dated at best, but less perfect examples can be drawn from Baltimore in 2015 or the Chaz in 2020. When there is no law and order, those who are willing and able to perpetrate the most violence are the ones in charge and impose their own form of tyranny over the weaker elements in society. I am wondering right now how much chaos it might take for the American people to actually invite the same kind of tyranny over themselves that happened in New Orleans. I mean, if you think about it, if the electrical grid went out, or if there was a coordinated terrorist attack, a bunch of coordinated terrorist attacks all over the country, or if a natural disaster wiped out roads and food production and distribution, or even if an armed rebellion or civil war broke out for any number of reasons, even including those previous ones, what level of chaos would lead to enough fear for the American people to voluntarily invite the government to take their rights away from them and then impose martial law, suspend the Constitution, suspend all the rights we've come to count on, our fellow man, our fellow American understanding? What would it take for the American people to ask for tyrannical man-made laws to replace the natural law our country codified and has, at least in theory, been living under? What do you think? What would it take?